All right, no, so that's very refreshing from other people kung paano nila i-explain ang paano nga ba nag-work ang website, no? So let's have a quick recap kung ano yung nasabi ni Maximilian from the video. So let's start with the most obvious way of using the internet. For example, visit mo yung website nila, academind.com. So the moment na i-enter daw natin yung web address sa browser, for example, type natin academind, then you hit enter, a lot of different things could happen. So ano-ano yung mga yon? First, yung URL or Uniform Resource Locator gets resolved. Second, a request is sent to the server of the website. Then, the response of the server is parsed. Ibig sabihin po nun, ma'am, paano pong the response of the server is parsed, no? Let me show you. Hold on. I'll be showing to you the, anong tawag dito? The image na ipinakita sa website. Hold on. Yan. So, okay. Again, for example, you go to the www.academind.com, no? The moment you hit enter nga yung web browser, papunta dyan sa website na yan. First, the URL gets resolved. Okay? And then a request is sent to the server of the website, and then the response of the server is parsed, and then the page is rendered and displayed. So, ito yung nakikita na ni user, no? Kaya actually, every single step could be split up in multiple other steps. But for us, hindi naman natin nakikita yon kung tayo yung user. Nasisimplify lang na, okay, pag-click ko dito sa webpage na ito or pag-enter ko ng domain name niya, madali ko nang nakikita yung website. So, for a good overview how it all works, no, that's something we can ignore here. Kasi nga, ito naman is ginagawa na at the back end of your web. So, kung ikaw ang user, you no longer need to worry about this. What you just need to do is yung makita yung ano bang hinahanap mong website, ano ba yung hinahanap mo from the web. Okay, so that's how Maximilian started off with how the web works, no? So, from here, we are going to continue our discussion on what you can do with JavaScript. Kanina yung mga applications sa pag-usapan natin. Ngayon, ano nga ba yung pwede natin gawin? Number one, you can modify the content of a web page by adding or removing elements. So, using JavaScript, we can do that. We can also change the style and position of the elements on a web page. Pwede natin i-manipulate yung mga position and elements natin. Then, you can monitor events like mouse click, hover, and then react to it. So, kung napapansin nyo na pag meron kayo mga website na binivisit, when you click on a certain link, on an image, may nakikita si user sa screen nila. Then, we can also do that or add that to a better good look and feel ng ating web page. You can also perform and control transitions and animations. Then you can create alert pop-ups to display info or warning messages to the user. I was able to tell you that a while ago. Then you can perform operations based on user inputs and display the results. Then lastly, you can validate user inputs before submitting it to the server. Okay, so yan yung mga pwede natin gawin with the JavaScript. Ano ba yung advantages of using JavaScript? Of course, it has less server interaction. You can validate user input before sending the page off to the server. This saves server traffic, which means less load on your server. So, kung sa front end pa lang ng web design mo, na-validate mo na yung mga user input na hindi naman tama, then it will be able to save yung lesser traffic para mas mapabilis yung paglo-load ng information from the server. Then, it also has an immediate feedback to the visitors. They don't really have to wait for a page to load to see if they have forgotten to enter something. Kasi dun pa lang kita na nila if you added some JavaScript functions for that. Then it increased interactivity, which can create interfaces that react when the user hovers over them with a mouse or activates them via keyboard. It also creates richest interfaces, which you can use JavaScript to include such items as drag and drop components and sliders to give a rich interface to your site visitors. So, pretty much nakikita naman natin to sa mga ibang web pages na, no? But, of course, we don't know that's has been created with JavaScript if you don't really going to understand, or not really understand, but study how to create web programming and design. Now, ang limitations naman ng JavaScript natin is that we cannot treat JavaScript as a full-fledged programming language because it lacks the following important features. Number 1, client-side JavaScript does not allow the reading or writing of files. This has been kept for security reasons. Second, JavaScript cannot be used for networking applications because there is no such support available as of the moment. And third, it doesn't have any multi-threading or multi-processor capabilities. So, ma'am, ano nga po uli itong multi-threading or multi-processor capabilities? Parang narinig ko na to somewhere. So, kung naalala nyo, no, sa OOP natin from Java, I'm not sure kung ito ay na-discuss din, pero yeah, from Java, pag sinabi nating multi-threading, it is the ability ng program or ng, for example, ng isang operating system to enable more than one user at a time without requiring multiple copies of the program running on the computer. So, kapag marami ng users, no, hindi na siya, kumbaga hindi kaya pa ni JavaScript na enable yung user na hindi siya nagre-require ng multiple copies ng program kapag kapag nirarana siya. Now, ang multi-threading kasi is one of the advantages of an object-oriented programming. Kapag gumamit ka nun, sinusupport niya yung multi-threading. Ibig sabihin, multi-threading can handle multiple requests from the same user. So, as if the moment si JavaScript, hindi pa kaya yon. The request can be made only one at a time. No, yun yung isa sa, limitation niya. Then, paano ba natin idadagdag si JavaScript sa ating web pages? So, i-embed natin si JavaScript code between a pair of the script tag. So, sa loob ng ating HTML, i-add natin ito, script tag. Then, sa loob ng script tag, doon natin i-insert lahat ng ating mga codes for JavaScript. So, creating an external JavaScript file with a JS extension and then load it within the page through the source attribute of the script tag. Then, you're going to place the JavaScript code directly inside an HTML tag using the special tag attributes such as onClick, onMouse over, onKeyPress, onLoad, etc. So, paano nga po ba, ma'am, yung syntax ng JavaScript natin? Sabi ko nga kanina, i-enter lang natin to kasama ng HTML natin. Then, gamit tayo ng pair ng script tag on our HTML tags. Then, sa loob ng ating script tags, andun yung mga codes. So, intindihin muna natin paano ba siya nag-work out. No, first, yung script tag takes two important attributes. The first one is the language. Then, itong attribute na to, ini-specify niya yung scripting language na ginagamit mo. Typically, its value will be JavaScript, although yung mga recent versions of HTML and XHTML have phased out the use of this attribute. Second one, type is what is now recommended to indicate the scripting language in use, and its value should be set to text/JavaScript. So this is something that you no longer need to change. kapag ini-input natin sa ating script tags. Kung inabot nyo pa no, yung ganong klase ng loading ng browsers, but I don't think not, kasi matagal ng panahon yun, medyo matagal-tagal na rin. It will make parang alam mo yun, yung pag-load ng data sa browser na sobrang bagal. It feels like unresponsive anymore, very slow. So, ganun yung traditional na web applications. But by contrast, with an Ajax-based application, the core page, yung mga template, yung mga framework, niloload siya synchronously as normal. So, however, the page mainly consists of JavaScript libraries that then request the data from the server asynchronously. Now, kapag na-retrieve na yung data or na-receive na yung data, yung JavaScript library will then render that section to the user. So, ibig sabihin, mas magiging mabilis yung pag-transfer ng data from the server back to the user, which you will not be able to feel anymore na alam mo yun, parang nag-fetch siya ng ganong kalaking data from the server. Kasi nakita mo agad yung response niya, yung request na ginawa ng user, nasa screen agad nila. Now, the benefits of using Ajax are that the page will load faster, obviously, and the user interface can then be progressively rendered to the user. Meaning, it will increase yung responsiveness ng web application. And it will also means that when a user interacts with the page, for example, yung pagkiklik nga ng button, it only the uploaded data needs to be sent. And only the portion of the page that is affected needs to be rendered. So, ibig sabihin, lumiliit na yung processing time para request mo yung data at the same time mabalik yung data doon sa nagre-request. So, yun yung kagandahan ng paggamit ng JavaScript programming. Another one is for presentations. No? JavaScript also provides the facility of creating presentations which gives a website the look and feel. JavaScript provides Reveal JS and Bespoke JS libraries to build a web-based slide presentations. So, para sa mga plugins that you can use in your front end and back end. Then, meron din siyang for server applications, ang ginagamit doon is the Node.js, which is built on Chrome's JavaScript runtime for building fast and scalable network applications. Now, this is an event-based library which helps in developing very sophisticated server applications, including web servers. So, to tell you more about server applications, I'll be sharing to you a video from from YouTube. This is actually created by Academind, and the article from the website itself was written by Mr. Maximilian. So he shared about how the web works, especially from creating a basic HTML, CSS, and then using or creating JavaScript for your web. So, according nga kay Maximilian, the web is everywhere now because we use it more than we ever did before. Also in many places where you might not see it because the web is more than just websites you visit by entering a URL in your web browser. So, according to him, no matter if you check your emails on your mobile phones, if you're sending a tweet or you are using the internet, then paano nga ba siya nag-work out, no? So, I'll be sharing to you that kind of video that will explain to you further kung ano nga ba, paano ba nag-work ang web from HTML to JavaScript. So, let's watch the video from Academind.
How does the web work? Now, maybe you're now thinking, what's this question? Of course I know how the web works. Well, maybe you do, but maybe you're also leaving out some important parts. In this video and in the article which you find below the video, in the video description also, I will have a look at how the web works, which different pieces are involved, and how that influences what you, if you want to become a web developer or if you're simply interested into the topic, should learn and should be aware of. Now, as always, if you're liking this, I'd love to welcome you as a subscriber. Please share the video and the usual stuff. With that, let's lose no time and dive right in. With that, let's start with the most common scenario. You're visiting a web page, like our web page, academind.com. So you fire up your browser, you enter https www.academind.com, or maybe just academind.com, and the browser adds the other parts, and I'll come back to that in a second. Now you expect the website to show up on the screen, but what is actually happening behind the scenes? Well, the website is stored on some server. So the website you're seeing is either generated dynamically there, or the code for it was actually stored there already and is returned back. Because your browser in the end is just an interpreter, you could say, that gets back certain source code, to which I will come back in a second, and it can display that on the screen. And that source code could either be stored on the server already, or it's generated by the server. But one important question at this point of time already is, how does the server know that we do mean it, the server, by entering academind.com? Is this the address of the server, just like your street and house number is your address? Actually not. The official address of each server is an IP stands for Internet Protocol, address. And an IP address looks something like this, or in a more modern version like this. This is of course not something you would want to enter into your browser, but you could do it actually. You could enter such an address, if you knew it, into the browser and visit a website with just that address. But of course the domain, as this other thing here is called, is much more human readable. And therefore the actual first thing that happens when you enter this is that your browser contacts a DNS, domain name system server, which is basically like a huge dictionary where each domain name is mapped to an IP, you could say. And then, therefore, this DNS server translates your academind.com domain into an IP address. This IP address is then given to the browser, and with that, the browser can actually make that request to the server which has the IP address. Then there, as I mentioned, we generate the source code for the website, and then this is sent back to the browser where this website is now displayed. That is how this works in a nutshell. Now the part where you enter the URL, so academind.com, and you send this off to the internet, that is called a request. The browser makes a request for this page. And a request is like a package of data where this URL is one part, but another part would be the type of request, because it turns out there are different types, which you, for example, use for getting a website or for storing some data in the web. So if you submit a form, you send a different type of request, for example. A request could then also include that data you want to send, or it includes no data if you're only requesting something or you only want to get something. It can also contain some metadata, so-called headers. And you can always have a look at a request if you go into the browser, open the developer tools in there, which every browser has, and then in the network tab, you inspect the request that is being sent. And there you will see all the metadata and so on that was attached to the request. It's always interesting to see that. Now what you're getting back is a response. That is also a data package in the end, and you can also inspect that. And this also, again, contains some metadata maybe, and most importantly, for a traditional website, the HTML code that should be rendered. HTML code is something we haven't heard before, but that's essentially that source code that is displayed or that is turned into what you see on the screen by the browser. And that takes us to the involved technologies already. What you see in the browser is the result of a combination of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. These are the three languages or technologies involved in getting onto the screen what you see. Now, HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language, and that gives a website its structure. It doesn't say anything about the styling, it just says what should be a heading, what should be a paragraph, what should be an input, what should be a button. That is what you say with HTML. And the browser is able to read that because it's a standardized format. Now, of course, a website should also look good, and that is done with CSS, which stands for Cascading Style Sheets. CSS is responsible for turning a text red, giving a button a certain look. And you as a developer can write that CSS code just as you write the HTML code to get the result you want. By the way, I also mentioned that a server might generate that dynamically. With that, I meant that it might generate the HTML code dynamically, and that with that, it actually gives you a different code back for different requests. That is something an online shop needs, for example, where you might want to display the cart content. This is part of the response, and that is only possible if that response, that HTML code, is generated dynamically on the server. Now, we're not diving into how this works here, but you as a developer, if you're building that website, you simply define rules on how the code should be generated, how it should look like, and when which code should be generated. This is all we need to know right now. The third language that is involved is JavaScript, and JavaScript is responsible for all the logic, all the dynamic things that happen in the browser. If you have a drop down, if you have tabs, if you have like that overlay that opens sometimes, or a sliding in navigation, that all is powered by JavaScript. It's basically responsible for everything that changes in the browser after the page has been loaded. Now, all that data transfer, as I said, is also standardized. It is, for example, standardized how a request and response should look like. That is all defined by the technology used, which is HTTP, which stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol. There also is HTTPS, which is the same just in an encrypted form, and all modern websites, including academite.com, use HTTPS actually, so that all data is encrypted. Hence, the request data you're sending and the response you're sending is end-to-end encrypted. So the browser and the server know how to decrypt it, but in between it's encrypted. And if someone were to sniff your connection, which is technically possible, then these people will only see some unreadable content. So they can't read which data you are sending or which data you are getting back. This is what HTTPS is. It's a standard that defines how a request should look like, and in the case of HTTPS, that it has to be encrypted. And the encryption is then done by the browser and by the server. So these are the core technologies involved. There also are more technologies because, for example, if on the server side we're generating this page dynamically, then this of course means that on the server side there needs to be some code that runs. And that is done with languages like Node.js, PHP, Python, and there also are frameworks that could be used there. Frameworks are basically packages of utility functions that also give you some rules on how to use them that make writing code simply easier because you don't have to reinvent the wheel for all the nitty-gritty details. You can focus on your business logic, and things like parsing incoming requests and so on is done by such a framework, so that you don't have to manually go through all the lines of an incoming request. You instead just get the finished parsed data, and you then write the logic what to do with that data instead of writing the parsing logic, which would always be the same. Such frameworks, by the way, also exist for the front end, where you might have applications where a lot of stuff is happening with the help of JavaScript to provide a nicer user experience, where you don't always need to fetch new pages for every click the user does, but where you want to show an overlay, where you want to change content on the page while the user is on the page. And that is then also made easier with such frameworks for the same reason as on the server, that you don't have to write the logic on how the change happens on the page, but instead you just write the logic for what should change when, and the framework takes over and does the heavy lifting. So frameworks also an important part of web development, but of course a part that is typically hidden away from you if you're just visiting pages, just as the other technologies, I guess. Now that is how the web works in a nutshell, but the web is more than just traditional websites. It's more than just HTML code getting sent back and displayed on the page. And with that, I mean that, for example, if you're having a mobile app, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, doesn't matter, you also, of course, have content that's not stored on your device, but somewhere in the internet. Let's say pictures posted by other users. There, you don't actually get back HTML pages that contain these pictures, but instead only data is exchanged. And it is important to understand that with the web, we don't just mean websites, but we basically mean any interaction where you have some computer called a server, which sits somewhere out there in the internet, not in your room, And you're communicating with that server, not actively but inactively, so indirectly. Your app communicates with that, your website. A website might send a request, get back a response with HTML. Now that request-response pattern is always the same, but actually a mobile app, for example, sends a request but doesn't want HTML as a response, and it clearly says that in the request. Instead, it wants something which typically is called JSON data. That's a specific data format, and we don't need to dive into the details there right now. But there, the server responds with a data package, which is not parsable by the browser, so it's not something that would be converted into a visual website by a browser, but by the app. The app which people wrote, like Instagram, the source code behind the app, knows how to parse that incoming response and how to handle that. If that, for example, are 5 new posts by people you're following, well, then that is converted into something you can see on the screen with the help of the source code written by the developers of the app. So that is also where we have the internet. Same request-response pattern, but the data which is exchanged is different. It's not a HTML page, it's another form of data. So the data format is flexible. The core idea that we have code running on a server and code running on our device, no matter if it's a mobile phone or if it's a browser, that core idea is always the same. Now, there also are more advanced technologies, for example, for real-time communication, where you don't have request-response, but where the server can actively push a new message to the client. So the client never sent a request, but gets new data anyways through an established connection with a technology named WebSockets. But that's even more advanced. It exists, though. I hope that nonetheless with this, you might have learned something which you already knew. Well, doesn't hurt then. I hope I didn't steal too much of your time, but you also might have learned something which you only vaguely knew before, which now is a bit clearer, hopefully. Hopefully see you in other videos too. Bye.
Hi, good day, and welcome to another lesson for web design and programming. So today po, tayo po ay discuss about JavaScript fundamentals. At the end of this lesson, we should be able to explain and understand the fundamental programming concepts, including data types, operators, creating and using variables, generating outputs, structuring your code to make decisions in your programs or to loop over the same block of code multiple times, creating and manipulating strings and arrays, defining and calling functions, and so on. So we will also we'll be able to explain the idea of objects and the document object model, or DOM, by using form objects, no? So meron palang ibang ibig sabihin ng DOM, no, pagdating sa JavaScript. Hindi siya, alam niyo na, yung dating term, pero this is a document object model. Okay, so in JavaScript fundamentals, syempre, it's the most popular and widely used client-side scripting language. When we say client-side scripting, it refers to script that run within your web browser and is designed to add interactivity and dynamic effects to the web pages by manipulating the content returned from a web server. So if you need something from your user, JavaScript would be able to help us out with that. Kasi nga, nakakapag-create siya ng dynamic effect when it comes to web programming. So, in a way, para maging interactive yung inyong website, syempre, kailangan natin ng scripting language for it. At JavaScript is the one of the most popular at madalas na ginagamit for a client-side scripting languages. JavaScript was originally developed as LiveScript by Netscape in the mid-1990s, and then it was later renamed to JavaScript in 1995 and became an ECMA standard in 1997. Ano bang ibig sabihin ng ECMA or ECMA? It is actually, of course, an acronym for European Computer Manufacturers Association. Sila yung nagde-develop ng mga standards for information technology and consumer electronics. So, yung language such as JavaScript at Dart language, C# ay in-standardize na by ECMA. So parang think of the ECMA or ECMA script as JavaScript without a host environment. Kapag sinabi kasi nating JavaScript, it has two major environments. Yung tinatawag, yung ating browsers, alam niyo naman yan, no? Yung mga browsers natin and the node.js. So yung two environments na yon add some APIs to the language and to the language of the scripting. An example is the window object on browsers and the FS module in node.js. So, ito naman pag-uusapan natin dito lahat sa JavaScript fundamentals, no? Now, JavaScript is the standard client-side scripting language for web-based applications, and it is supported by virtually all web browsers available today katulad ng Google Chrome, Mozilla Firefox, Apple Safari, etc. JavaScript is an object-oriented language and it is also has some similarities in syntax to Java programming language. So kung nagkaroon na kayo ng experience in doing that, and for sure you have kasi yung OOP natin is gamit doon is Java. Meron silang similarity. So, but JavaScript is not really related to Java in any way. Halos similar lang sila, pero hindi naman sila related sa isa't isa. Now, JavaScript is officially maintained by the ECMA, or yung sabi ko nga kanina, European Computer Manufacturers Association, as ECMAScript 6 or ES6 is the latest version of the ECMAScript standard. So, what are the applications of JavaScript programming language? So, the applications of it are as follows. So, meron tayong client-side validation. Ano ba ang client-side validation? This is really important to verify any user input before submitting it to the server, and JavaScript plays an important role in validating those inputs at front end itself. Okay, so pag sinabi natin client-side validation, for example, you were asking input from the customer regarding, let's say, an amount. So we are talking about digits, right? If you are asking your customer to enter numbers, dapat yun dang i-enter ni customer din, or ni user rather. So, kapag ka nag-input si user ng hindi digit or ng hindi number, then it should be identified already on the front end of your validation. So, dapat hindi na yun agad tatanggapin ng web browser dahil hindi naman digit yung ini-input ni user. So, that is the first application of JavaScript, a client-side validation. The second one is manipulating HTML pages. So, si JavaScript, it helps in manipulating HTML page on the fly. This helps in adding and deleting any HTML tag very easily using JavaScript, and modify your HTML to change its look and feel based on different devices and requirements. So, napakalinaw dito sa ating discussion that it helps maintaining or manipulating your HTML para mas makapagdagdag to ng magandang look and feel ng inyong web page. Next is user notifications. You can use JavaScript to raise dynamic pop-ups on the web pages to give different types of notifications to your website visitors. So, pag sinabi nating pop-up, ito yung mga alert boxes na nag-a-appear sa ating browser. So, we can add these kinds of user notifications to, of course, to add a better understanding para sa mga user natin kung meron ba tayong possible na nababiolate kapag tayo ay nag-enter ng input, o kaya naman may gusto kang iparating kay user na hindi agad present doon sa mismong webpage mo, but you wanted to notify or alert your user about it. So we can do that in JavaScript. So, yung back-end data loading, another application of it provides Ajax library, which helps in loading back-end data while you are doing some other processing. This really gives an amazing experience to your website visitors. So, ano bang ibig sabihin po, ma'am, no, na ipoprovide the JavaScript yung Ajax library? So, ano po yung Ajax library? Pag sinabi kasi nating Ajax libraries, Ajax is actually a group of interrelated web development technologies, asynchronous JavaScript and XML. As an example, it is used to create interactive web applications. So, katulad ng Rapis or Rapis is powerful support for testing Ajax web applications with the support for several popular JavaScript client-side libraries katulad ng tinatawag na Angular JS and React JS, as well as direct support for testing the asynchronous web services themselves. Now, like to give you a brief overview, paano po nakakatulong, ma'am, yung back-end data loading and Ajax library para mas maging maganda yung experience ng mga users na nagvi-visit po sa aming webpage. So, ganito kasi yon. In a traditional web application, ang entire page is niloload ng browser. So, for example, you're using Microsoft Edge. Traditionally, niloload siya lahat ng browser from the web servers and then rendered to the user as a single asynchronous operation. For example, kapag si user nag-click ng button sa isang page, yung entire page kailangan pang i-refetch or kunin from the server and then i-render again. Now, this tends to make the application feel slow and relatively unresponsive. Kaya before, and I'm not really sure kung